All right, we're live.
All right, so to give you some backdrop, so we all know about the Palestinian Israel bullshit that's been going on for the past fucking
80
God knows
years.
how long at this point in time. Um, so here's the simple facts. One, the Israeli outlook on the War of Independence is not completely up to snuff. There's a lot of backdrop that has to do again with the British. The British are the main players here when it comes to Israel. Because remember, Transjordania, which is the original name of the colony, is what Palestine comes out of. Now, does
Yes.
anybody know where the root of the name Palestine comes from?
Isn't it
No.
Syria, Palestina from when the Romans conquered Judea and then
Yes.
turned and then as an insult called it Palestine?
Well, Syria, Palestina, Palis, the term Palestine was codified by them, but the overall region has kind of always, again, the Levant is an interesting place because, like, for example, you had the county of Edessa. Most people do not refer to the city as the county of Edessa anymore. Hell, I don't even know. I don't even know what fucking name it goes by anymore. I don't know if it goes by Edessa still or if it has a different name because the Turks. Anyways, the point is that the Levant has been an ever-changing place because, as I've said previously, every time a major power comes to the Levant is in upheaval. Now, the situation that is currently ongoing between Palestine and Israel is that the Israelis are trying to reestablish Judea. The
Yes.
problem is that Judea cannot be achieved under the current circumstances. Israel is incapable of actually producing their own means to wage war, which is what is necessary in order to secure your sovereignty. To prepare for peace is to prepare for war. Si vis pacem per bellum.
Yes.
Now, the whole situation here, and I saw your comments, Dale, and I saw your guys' conversation and whatnot. Here's the thing. This is actually to the benefit of the Palestinians, not to the Israelis. And the reason being is because the US does not have the stomach for bombing people. We don't. There's a reason why even the average Joe Blow who has seen the news reports of the bombing of Gaza is sickened by it rather than being on the side of the Israelis. There's a reason why the Israelis have the sentiment right now that all they want is the Americans to open up their arms market. They don't care if the Americans help them. They just want American weapons. Well, because of this disgust that is permeated through American society, seeing the images of Israel just wholesale bombing the shit out of Gaza, the reluctance to open our arms market to the Israelis is at an all-time high. So, in order to be able to not only secure peace, but also be able to create the conditions where not a two-state solution, but a armistice line, kind of deal, where you can prevent the fighting. This is kind of what's gone on in southern Lebanon, for example, when the Irish troops looked at the fucking Israelis and said, yeah, shoot us. We fucking dare you. And the Israelis backed off like fucking bitches because they understood they could not shoot at the Irish peacekeepers without inciting a massive response from the rest of the world because everybody would just look at that and be like, are you fucking crazy? So this isn't actually to the benefit of the Israelis. Far from it. This is to the benefit of the Palestinians. Because if American troops come in and they establish an armistice line where they say, okay, Palestinians don't cross the line, Israelis don't cross the line, everybody just keep it fucking kosher.
Yeah. No.
And then, go ahead, Neil.
I said I don't necessarily disagree, with the one exception of this assumes the people in Palestine aren't going to continue to wage their jihad, which it seems that they're just going to, instead of killing Israelis, now they'll just be killing Americans. And that's my main issue with it. If they agreed to peace, that would be fine. But they're not going to, because there's still a bunch of fucking primitive jihadis.
Hey,
yeah,
babe,
that's my problem too.
Hold on, guys. Babe, can you mute your mic? You've got white noise coming off the background.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're fine. So
Yeah,
here's the thing.
that's my problem too, because I've seen way too many Americans go over to that fucked up piece of shit region of Earth and then come back home with limbs blown off, their brains fucked up, or just in a good old fashioned flag draped box. We've had enough of this shit. What's the? I mean, it's another say. What is the guarantee? What is the motherfucking guarantee that this is not going to escalate and we are not going to get dragged into another goddamn war over there?
Well, that's the thing, is because we're not. See, here's the key things to understand.
Oh, really?
Who were the three nations? Let me explain. Who were the three nations that did not have their foreign aid suspended?
Israel, Ukraine, and was it Egypt?
No, it was Israel, Egypt, and Jordan. The three nations were Israel, Egypt, and Jordan. The reason why we did not suspend the foreign aid to Israel is because and again, we're not giving money to the Israelis. We're giving them a coupon.
Yes.
We're giving them a coupon that then they can use to then buy weapons. Now, the type of weapons and everything that we give them will depend, so on and so forth. The money that we're giving to the Egyptians and the Jordanians is twofold. One, to prop up the friendly governments, to keep them on side, and two, to keep them bribed enough in order to prevent them from trying to go after the Israelis. Because no matter what King Abdullah says, King Abdullah is in his throne simply by the grace of the Americans.
Yes.
If it was not for the Americans, the Wahhabists in Saudi Arabia would have overthrown the King Abdullah already and would have subsumed control of the country. Now, in the case of the Egyptians already fell once. We need to make sure that they stay on side. Because if they fall again, there's probably no hope of being able to retain even a monicum of control over that country. Period and destroy. Now, the whole thing is that the reason why this is not going to spiral, if it is done right, is that if Hamas decides to fuck around and find out, all of a sudden they got tier 1 ops coming on their asses. And that's the whole point, is that tier 1 operators are the perfect weapon for this kind of situation. You send them in and you proceed to hard hit specific key targets. Give me a moment. I will be right back.
I still think this is just a setup for a false flag.
Yeah, I don't think it's a setup for a false flag. I mean, again, at least to me, we only have a small amount of tier 1 operators, and I'd rather save them for dealing with the cartels than I would for dealing with fucking Israel's problem.
Yeah, exactly. That's the fucking point. We've got our own motherfucking issues on our northern and southern borders. Why the hell are we even bothering with this shit?
Okay, so to get back to what I was saying, first off, to answer your question, Stoner, tier 1 operators would not be good suits for the situation we're dealing on the borders right now. Because you have to so here's the thing. You have to collect intelligence. Now, do they have a trove of intelligence already? Yes. But how much of that intelligence is actionable? And that's the whole point, is how much of the intel is actually actionable, and they can actually put a tier 1 boot through a fucking door and proceed to schwack a motherfucker. That's not, unfortunately, something that is in high supply right now. Whereas putting the National Guard on the border to run interdiction ops instead is the way to go. See, you have to think of the whole toolbox. You can't think of that favorite wrench, because that favorite wrench can't hammer a nail.
Right. Well, weren't you last episode just saying we should be using the tier 1 and tier 2 operators to handle the cartels rather than the national?
Yes. If we were, and maybe I didn't make this clear enough, and maybe I forgot to say it. If we had the intel, that's what I would be doing.
I see.
But the problem is, do we have the intel? And that's the issue. Have you
seen that the Air Force is starting to fly, what are they, intelligence gathering aircraft over Mexico now?
Well, then they're working on gathering the SIGINT and the other intelligence that is needed in order to start building target packages.
Right, but I mean, it's not like we have the intel on Gaza either. It's like I'd assume we'd have more intel.
No, that's the thing.
Really?
That's the thing, though, is that Mossad probably does have the intel, but does Mossad have the assets to actually go on that intel? That's the question. So if they don't have the assets, but they have the intel and we have the assets, remember, here's the thing, is that we have stolen the Israelis out from under the British. The British no longer control the Israelis to the degree that they used to. And to really drive it home, look at the situation Netanyahu's in. Netanyahu is looking at massive fucking problems. And overall, if you look at it real deep, the Supreme Court's having enough issues as well.
Right.
Which, if you don't know, the Supreme Court is how the British have controlled Israel for so long. And then Netanyahu was our proxy. But here's the problem, is that at the end of the day, the Supreme Court is having just as many issues as Netanyahu has. So what happens if we replace Netanyahu? And that is what this play could be. We build up the intel that we need in order to get rid of Netanyahu, which then we bring in a new guy to replace Netanyahu, which then cements our position over Israel and removes any possibility of the Supreme Court being able to make a comeback.
I still think this is just a setup for a false flag.
No.
False flag what? False flag what, Stoner? Please tell me what false flag is being set up. Because we cannot throw around these terms without having actual fucking ideas of who it's related to.
Okay. The Israelis do something, frame the Palestinians, and then guess what? We have to get involved in Afghanistan Part 2.
Again.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Okay, no, that's not what's going to happen. That's not even close what's going to happen. Hell, the Israelis have already been checked by the Turks.
Yeah.
We're stepping in because we need... there is a much bigger chessboard at play here than just Israel-Palestine.
Right. One thing that I'm not quite getting that maybe then you could elucidate, like, why do we need Israel? Like, it's not like they're a big, like, it's not, they don't have anything on the land we need, and I don't think they have really any, like, soft power that we can use to project elsewhere. Like, it seems like it's all just kind of a one-way relationship where Israel gets everything out of this. Like, what do we get out of this besides just having Israel on our side? Or if we have Israel on our side, what grander benefit do we derive out of that?
That's what I'd like to know.
This is going to sound very pragmatic and very fucking cruel. Israel's a pressure valve for us. See, for the British, Israel strategically allowed them to strike out at different threats within the Middle East to the oil trade and to the Suez that maintained British hegemony over the region. Whereas under the United States, Israel is a pressure valve. It gives a target for these different oppositional forces that allows the fight to stay over there and not come here. This is the whole thing with why allow shit to spiral like Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. See, we did too good of a job in Afghanistan. And this is what people don't understand about the situation with Afghanistan. We did too good of a job. We drove them out. Well, now we're reaping the penalties of driving them out of Afghanistan. Now we're dealing with them at home. AQ has gone global. ISIS has gone global. Taliban were a check to AQ and these other groups back in the day. Yeah. But then we overthrew Taliban. So we fucked up, not realizing it, because, unfortunately, the old U.S. government, thank God the new U.S. government seems to be a little more farsighted than their previous iterations. We were too short-sighted to realize, if we remove the one group that is actually keeping these people in check, because AQ, Al-Qaeda, for those who don't know the abbreviation, AQ was basically trapped in the Hindu Kush. They were trapped. They could not really come out of the mountains. And then we gave them the incentive after the Taliban were ousted. Because, mind you, the Taliban offered them on a silver platter. Mm-hmm. The Taliban literally offered us Osama bin Laden's head. Yes. And the idiots in Washington were like, no, we're just going to come in and overthrow you. Mm-hmm. Because we're going to play the British game. That's, this all is interwoven within the great game. The British were salty over losing the great game to the Russians before, and they thought they could make a comeback and win the great game this time. That turned into a shit show. We got bogged down for 20 years. Now Al-Qaeda has cells all over the world. Whether it be Central Asia, Africa, Southeast Asia, fucking South America, etc., etc. They have cells everywhere. ISIS, same kind of deal. Africa is literally we're potentially seeing the rise of a second caliphate in Central Africa, which luckily Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali and a couple of these other countries are all getting together to resist this, because while they might be Muslim, they're not that kind of Muslim. And it's there's a whole checkerboard that is involved with this. And if you only focus on those two pieces, then you're going to lose the game, period, in the story. And that is the issue, is that we have gotten fooled into only focusing on one or two pieces at a time. We're not seeing the wider picture of how this affects. In the case of the Israel-Palestine situation, Israel tried to make a move into Syria. Turkey checks them, says, if you go any further into Syria, we're going to bomb the shit out of you. Israel immediately backed off, reformatted their plans for their quote-unquote buffer zone, and it doesn't even include the entire, so that tribal group, or let's say ethnic group, but technically it's a tribal group. That group that wanted Israel to come in and take over southern Syria like they did, or like they wanted to, that group is currently migrating into the Israeli-held buffer zone because they need to get away from the new Syrian government, because the new Syrian government wants to kill them. Because the new Syrian government doesn't like their asses.
Right.
The Turks don't like those folks either, because those folks are considered I forget where they go within the timeline of the Ottoman Empire, but apparently like they were like one of the main groups that was like super rebellious during the Ottoman period, and so the Turks hate them. Like there's just a cultural hatred of these people.
Which people are
So the
that?
Turks, I don't remember their name off the top of my head. I'd have to go look it up real quick. But it's this
Right.
it's this specific group that that straddles the line between Jordan and Syria.
Yeah,
And-
but this just seems like we've got way too many pots on the stove right now to keep track of. How
What
the
are you
hell are
talking
we
about?
going to be able to focus on our own hemisphere when we're worried about what's going on in the Middle East still? It just
Well,
seems like it's just going to be
if
too
the
much
mission-
for
If the mission stays focused to what Trump said, which is going in and basically being a demarcation force, think of it like we're establishing the DMZ from North Korea. You have one group on one side, one group on the other side. You got us in the middle, and it's like, okay, if you want to fuck around, we'll fuck you both up. And then we do the job that has been laid out, getting rid of unexploded ordnance, helping rebuild infrastructure, helping clean debris, actually getting supplies and everything into the war zone, into the areas that need it most. If the mission stays on track and it stays focused, then it's a small mission overall. This is a
yeah, but
pitiful
we
small
also
mission.
know
But
yeah, but we also know that no plan survives first contact with the enemy.
Okay, that's to do with warfare.
yeah, so just one
This is
other
not warfare.
thing. So how is
Is
this
it
going to
though?
be functionally different than any of the other occupations the U.S. has been doing in these regions over the last 20 years? Like,
Well,
operationally,
that's
how's
the
that going to
thing
be
is-
different?
Well, look at the operational area. You're not going to be able to fit 50,000 troops into that fucking area.
Right.
So already the footprint's going to be small as hell.
But in
You
the
might be able to put a brigade in there. And then on top of that, again, if it stays within the scope, the mission has a definitive end time.
it does,
Oh, hey, we finished hooking up the water. We finished clearing all the bombs. Hey, by the way, you need to fucking chill the fuck out. So do you. And mind you, the finger pointing is not going to be just at the Palestinians. It's going to be at the Israelis. Because here's the thing, and the Israelis understand this. The Jews understand this, by the way. They understand that we will not take a side. We will just look at both of them and tell them, shut the fuck up and stop. They understand that.
Will we really though? I
have been in spaces with fucking, let's say 100 Jews over the past 2 fucking months. Fucking Poe can attest to it. I've been in fucking spaces talking to Jews for the past 2 fucking months. I've got a decent idea of what their feelings are at this point in time. And mind you, they're pissed. They hate the fact that we're not willing to cut them loose. They hate the fact that we're not willing to just sell them fucking everything under the sun in order to fucking just genocide the fucking Palestinians. They fucking hate it.
Well, then why would okay, but that doesn't. Let me try to get my thoughts back on track.
So is this force?
I'm
that's
trying to
gonna
get.
Be, sorry, go ahead.
So okay. So if I'm picking up what you're putting down, you're saying that the Jews you've been talking to just want to genocide the Palestinians.
Oh, dude, if they could kill every Muslim in the fucking world, they would.
Yeah.
Why in the hell have you been talking to these people? They seem like the scum of humanity.
Because I have to. I have to understand who the fuck I'm dealing with.
Yeah, you have to understand how they think
Well, it's
and how they operate.
It's the same reason why I would say everybody would, if you go back 10 years, everybody would be like, oh, Taliban, the scum of the earth. I would sit down with the Taliban today and be like, hey, bud, Let's hear your side of
It's
it.
good to know the enemy after all.
Yes.
You know, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer.
But that's the point, though, is that at the end of the day, you need to know what these people think in order to understand their modus operandi. And at the end of the day, do I blame them for viewing, like, they view it as a religious war. This isn't a land grab. This isn't a fucking, oh, they just want to finish pushing the Palestinians out of Israel, yada, yada. No, they view this as a religious
like,
war.
Both sides do, I think it's worth noting. Both the jihadists and the Zionists.
This is Butlerian Jihad 2.0.
Yeah. But so
I still can't help but think that the Zionists here in America is going to make us side with Israel and turn on the Palestinians.
Well, they don't have any power. Look at what happened with USAID. No, seriously. Look at what happened with USAID. They went in, they started fucking finding all the dirt. They started finding all the corruption. There's a reason why the Democrats are freaking out about USAID right now. Because they fucking found it all. And they're pissed because they've been exposed.
Yeah. So
the Zionists don't have the power anymore.
So one thing I'm just wondering...
Couldn't it be said that the Zionists still have the power because they're putting American troops in the Gaza Strip?
No.
One thing I do wonder, though, is this... So, this force that's going to be there, are they just going to be, like, they go in and they repair shit and they build shit? Or is it going to act like the other forces have, where they're basically like a military police in some occupied zone, where they're now in charge of, you know, like... You know how it was in Afghanistan. Like, is it going to be like that, or are they just coming in to, like, rebuild?
Well, it's going to be twofold. You're going to have the rebuilding part, and then you're going to have the protection part. Right. Every operation like this needs a protection element.
Sure.
So there's more than likely what's going to happen is that there's going to be a predetermined demarcation zone where the Israelis can't cross, the Palestinians can't cross. Everybody just has to fucking sit down and shut the fuck up. Because if they fire on American troops, like, I beg the Israelis to fucking try it. They fire on American troops, all of a sudden that country ceases to exist. The Palestinians, well...
Wouldn't hurt my feelings.
Fuck around, find out. Palestinians can get it too. And that's the thing.
Again,
is that we are creating the conditions where shit can be stopped. Because again, regardless of how the fucking Israelis feel, the American people see bombs being dropped on hospitals. Mm-hmm. And shit doesn't feel right.
Right.
There's a reason now I'll use an analogous situation, Ukraine. We all see the pictures and we all see the video of bombs getting dropped on fucking hospitals and shit. But the key difference is that while there are no patients in Ukraine in those hospitals, because those hospitals have been turned into military strong points, which is 99% of the time. There was the one time where a errant bomb or errant missile, which was proven to have been shot, quote unquote, shot down. It was deflected. It wasn't a true shoot down, but it was deflected by air defense, and it struck a hospital that had patients. Errant missiles, when you're launching into civilian occupied areas, that's just unfortunately part of the fucking deal.
Correct.
But when you have hospitals that are filled with patients, especially patients that have been wounded by the actions of one side, and then that side who created those wounded patients then proceeds to bomb the hospital they're being treated at, it doesn't sit well with people. And
right.
I get it with the Israelis. I understand. They feel like they have to fucking do it because Hamas has tunnels under that bitch. And I get it. The basement is probably a fucking armory. But at the end of the fucking day, the people the regular Joe Blows in this country, are not going to sit well with it, because our way of doing it would be sending Tier 1 in, dropping them on that roof, and then proceeding to clear down through the hospital and evacuating it, and then blowing the fucking weapon cache. It's the difference in mindset. We would much rather risk our own lives to go in and clear that bitch rather than just murdering civilians. Mm-hmm. And that's the key difference between us and the Israelis. Hey, Mitch, how you doing?
Oh, not bad.
Hey, Mitch, I apologize about the bad joke the other day. I didn't mean to piss you off.
No, it wasn't that. I was having another bad night there.
Understandable.
And the last few days, well, Warhound's been busy moving apartments. I've been busy outside taking advantage of the warm weather to get things done on the outside of the house that needed to be done there.
It warmed up.
In other words, I've been out in the real world touching grass and cutting grass.
I'm glad.
Yeah, our winter only lasted for a few days, and that was 2 weeks ago.
Fair enough.
What they're saying on the weather, about the middle of next week, winter will be making a return engagement.
Shit. Even down here?
Yeah. It'll be getting again. They're showing about the middle of next week we might actually be getting some freezing rain up this way.
Dang. That's some of the worst weather. Over here it's been winter since like November, and it's probably gonna be winter until like May, as usual.
I was gonna say until what, June?
No, then it becomes summer, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just saw the little 3-minute announcement by Trump there at that press conference about Gaza there, and I figured you guys would probably be on here discussing it. Yeah. Although there ain't much to go on, just what he said in that 3 minutes. The devil's going to be in the details.
Well, that's the thing, and I listened to his words and what he was saying, and I'll just recap it. I think this is a basically setting up a peacekeeping operation. Like, this is just, hey, you're gonna stop shooting at each other now, and we're gonna help you rebuild. If you decide to fuck around, you will find out. And mind you, that statement's pointed towards both the Palestinians and the Israelis. Because notice how that announcement came at the end of the so-called ceasefire that Trump put together when he first got into office. And this whole, and again, as I said, this whole thing smells like they're going in to specifically separate the two and then proceed to start trying to help the Palestinians. Because here's the thing, and this is something that a lot of people are not picking up. The Palestinians don't have anywhere to go. Egypt won't take them. Jordan won't take them. It's over. There's nowhere for these people to go.
Well, if memory serves, one time decades ago, Jordan did actually try to let the Palestinians move into Jordan and start living and working there. And in return for their hospitality, the Palestinians tried to stage a fucking revolution and overthrow the damn government.
Yep.
So that's why the other countries in the area want nothing to fricking do with them.
Right.
Yes, you would be correct.
Yes.
And that's the ongoing problem, is that the Wahhabists have their claws very deep within the Palestinian population.
Yes.
Which is why I made the statement about, if the intel is good, sending tier 1 ops in to hit targets is probably the way that we're going to handle this situation, while we have a blocking force put up specifically to deter either side from shooting at each other. And again, if the Palestinians want to find out by attacking U.S. servicemen, then they'll just rally the country against them. And that's the whole point, is at the end of the day, it's on the Palestinians or the Israelis to not shoot at the Americans.
Right, but wouldn't those jihadis now just be able to point to the Americans and say, now they're occupying us, and turn the ire of the population against America and the Americans there?
Well, that's the key thing, is they can't. Again, the sentiment of the American people is they want the killing to stop.
Yes.
And if the jihadis wanted to play around and try to fuck with us, it'll actually kind of turn the population against them. Because the population, the Palestinians have TikTok, they have Instagram, they have Twitter, they have all this shit. They understand that American sentiment is with them. And so if they fuck around, they're going to ruin that goodwill, and the PLO might make a comeback.
Yeah. And also, there's one option: if they fuck around too much and piss off the people in the United States, where they said, "Okay, we're fucking done with you. We're leaving. We'll let the Israelis deal with you again."
Yeah. And mind you, they don't want that, because if we unlock our arsenal to the Israelis and we say, buy whatever the fuck you want, the Palestinians cease to exist. And mind you, the Turks have no love for the Palestinians. They just don't like the Israelis. So if the Palestinians want to fuck around and find out, they will find out. So there is no situation in which we don't benefit from this, because one, we're doing the humanitarian thing. Everybody benefits from humanitarian missions, period of the story. It's just good press. And if you attack a humanitarian mission, it's really bad press. Look at what happened in Africa. Boko Haram started going after humanitarian workers, and then the entire world turned their guns on them. And Boko Haram went from being the most powerful militia in the entirety of Africa to all of a sudden being second rate and replaced by ISIS. Oh, and by the way, most of the Boko guys, they get captured by ISIS and they get strung up, or they get burned alive.
Really?
Just saying.
What issue I'm just curious, what issue does ISIS have with Boko Haram? Aren't they the same sort of jihadist?
Yes, but they're different organizations and they don't trust each other. It's the
kind of
same
like the
difference.
Bloods of the Crypt.
It's just like with AQ and ISIS. AQ and ISIS don't get along. We used AQ to fight ISIS.
Right.
So and that's my overall sentiment with the whole situation. I get people being concerned. Like, Stoner, I'm not disregarding your sentiment whatsoever. But at the end of the fucking day, there is no way to create the situation that you're spinning up in your head. There's no false flag here. There's no false flag. The Israelis drop a bomb on one of our guys. Guess what? We know the Israelis did it. They fire an artillery shell. We know they did it.
It's just 20 years wasted in that fucked up part of the world that has me worried about this shit keeping on going.
Again, because we were doing the British bidding. We were at the behest of the British Empire that thought it could come back for round 2, and they did not realize that the native population does not fuck around.
Yep. But I do see Stoner's point in one case there. In that case, after 20 years of fighting for the forever war over there in that part of the world, there's going to be a lot of people in this country who are going to go, "Oh fuck, not again." That's going to be the sentiment of a lot of people. Yeah.
I fully understand.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet just about every single GWAT vet that saw that speech is probably looking for a new television right now because they threw the fucking remote through it.
But at the end of the day, the optics are clear. the Palestinians have the sentiment of the American people. And thus, it is in their best interest to not fuck around. Just like with the Israelis, it's in their best interest not to fuck around. Because the Israelis live and die by our word. Period, end of story. If the Israelis were to throw a bomb at us and we just look at them and say, okay, you're cut the fuck off, we're leaving. Hey, all you other guys in the region have fun. All of a sudden, Israel as a country vanishes because they depopulate so quickly.
And not only that, but also just about every other country that's attacking them gets a nice little nuke via, what is it, the Samson option or the Samson plan or whatever the fuck it's called?
Yeah, the
Samson protocol.
Option. Yeah.
Samson protocol. And no, that's not the case, because at the end of the fucking day, Israel will literally look at everybody, be like, oh shit, and proceed to evacuate the country. Because at the end of the day, they lob nukes. Let me explain this. The first person in the world to throw modern nuclear weapons is literally persona non grata. They literally lose their right to exist as a people. The Israelis will not launch nukes because they will contact NATO, be like, hey, so come secure our nukes, and we need flights, lots and lots of flights, and they'll just depopulate the country. They'll just run because because at the end of the fucking day, and this is the sentiment I get from the Jewish people themselves. As long as Jews survive, the Jewish people remain. Period, in a story. Their survival is their number one priority. They are not stupid enough to kill themselves by launching nukes at other countries, because they will die. Because countries in Europe and America will proceed to look at them and be like, you did what? And proceed to close their borders to them. Try to come in with an Israeli passport. You'll get fucking detained at that point in time, because they're going to be like, okay, well, were you involved in this?
Not to mention, it would make life rather interesting for a lot of people in the United States, and especially in the U.S. government that had dual citizenship.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a very interesting situation for them to be in.
No, it would be 9/11 all over again.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think that some of those people that already have the dual citizenship are already under scrutiny right now.
Well, no, not necessarily. Because here's the point, is, again, Israel is a client of the United States. If the United States says jump, Israel fucking jumps. Again, that's just how it works. If Israel gives us the reason to cut them off, we will cut them off. So they're not going to go that route. They know they can't survive. Like there might be some bluster. There might be some like rah that goes on. But at the end of the fucking day, they don't survive without the U.S. arms market. Who are they going to turn to for arms? Who?
No one.
Name a country that has the arms production capability to actually sustain open combat. There's only 3 in the world.
Us,
right.
China,
There's
and
only
Russia.
3. Huh?
Us, China, and Russia.
Isn't
the last time I checked,
South
whenever
Korea
the Chinese tried to...
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Mitch,
South Korea as well.
Yeah, okay, Stoner got it. Okay,
Yeah.
so 4. My
South
bad.
Korea.
I wasn't even thinking of China in this equation, but yeah, 4. So there's 4. Yeah. The U.S.,
but here's
Russia,
something
China,
funny about
and South Korea.
China. Yeah, well, here's something funny about China. I was watching you know that tankathon thing that they do over in that part of the world, or that whatever the fuck it's called? Well, yeah, anyways, the Chinese tank that was in the race, guess what happened to it?
What?
Probably blew
It
up.
lost a couple of, lost a couple of road wheels and become immobilized.
Well, yeah, that's just something that Any tank can have that happen to it.
Made in China.
Well, no, that's literally just something that can happen to any tank. I don't disregard. Like when I hear about tanks, it's either one of two things: something like a track falling off, or the power pack fucking exploded. And by the way, Leopard 2s are notorious for catching fire. Because if you don't clean them properly, they like to catch fire.
Yeah, why do you think the American military didn't choose the Leopard 2 over the Abrams?
Actually, it was a cost benefit thing.
Yeah.
Oh, one little aside that saw the article just before I came over here. Apparently, the past 2 months, recruitment for the U.S. Army has went through the roof.
Guess what? They just got picked for bomb disposal duty.
Yeah. Apparently, with Trump back in,
Hi.
said, "Okay, we're not."
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
They, yeah. Well, thanks to you, I gotta mute my mic now. They say hello.
Yeah. Apparently,
I love her, but we're in the middle of something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That people are enlisting in the armed forces again.
Well, yeah, because at the end of the day, confidence is up.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, is at the end of the fucking day, people, in order to serve, people need to be confident in the nation. And people were not confident under the last administration.
Not at all.
That's a colossal understatement.
Yeah, I'm keeping it simple for the fucking podcast. But the fact of the matter is that you have a situation where we could potentially put to bed a age-long conflict as the peacekeeper, not the aggressor, the peacekeeper. This is a golden opportunity for the Middle East. And if they don't see that, then they're idiots. But hey, Wahhabists, they're kind of retarded. We need to fucking carpet bomb Saudi Arabia in some Stone Age. But
agreed.
I digress.
I've got to ask, and I know someone's going to be asking this question if this is the very first podcast they see. Why the fuck is the British the boogeyman? Aren't they just some little itty-bitty teeny island now with a shit army and navy?
Okay, so to explain, the British economy is propped up by two things. Formerly LIBOR, so you can say it's propped up by one thing now. But you had two things back in the day. You had LIBOR, the London Interbank options rate, or you had the London Insurance Exchange. Basically, the whole British economy is propped up by selling insurance for global shipping. Now that's changing, and it's shifting because now you have insurance in Russia, you have insurance in China, you have insurance in the United States. It's starting to shift away from, like, the British are losing this market share. But the thing is that all of the British energy, for the longest time, and still the majority of it, comes out of the Middle East. And they are hyper reliant on that Middle Eastern energy. And so they've always needed to be able to maintain a presence and influence over that region in order to make sure that they were always capable of getting that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the day, that's the British angle. That's what Israel was set up. And I would hate to fucking just say this straight up to the Israelis. And I've kind of said it in a softer way, but they were nothing more than a British client meant to live and die for the empire. That was their whole thing. That was the only reason for their existence. The War of Independence was a fluke by all rights. It was a fucking fluke. And at the end of the fucking day, they managed to consolidate their position simply because the British were like, well, fuck. It's got a mind of its own. Well, shit, we might as well fucking back it up a little bit.
Right.
And then even then, the British stopped supporting it because the British didn't need the wider Middle East getting on the British back because the British still needed the energy.
So why is it that they specifically need the energy from the Middle East? Couldn't they have gone to either like Russia or the U.S. for energy as well, or one of the other countries?
Canada.
Canada, Venezuela, even.
So you let me untangle this spider web for you. Okay, so you have to remember one thing. What were Bahrain and Qatar?
Weren't they originally British colonies as well?
Yes. And that's Qatar and Bahrain were where most of the oil that the British were shipping to the home islands, that's where most of the oil was coming from. So they were shipping it from Bahrain and Qatar, shipping around the peninsula, through the Gulf of Aden, up the Red Sea, through the Suez, and into the Med. This is where the majority that was the flow chart. Now, the situation with why couldn't they get their energy? Because they controlled energy already. They already controlled that. Even with Qatar and Bahrain being free, Qatar and Bahrain still are heavily controlled by the British. Very controlled. Qatar does its own little thing and stays out of the way of the British. That's basically the arrangement. Qatar is allowed to fund whatever the fuck they want as long as it doesn't impede British strategic interest. By all rights, the only reason why we haven't marched into Qatar and started knocking off Qatari fucking princes for funding terrorism is because we can't, because the British told us not to. Now, in regards to alternative sources, yes, the British were receiving oil from the British. Oh, wait, they're still receiving oil from the British through intermediaries like India. But the point is that they were originally just receiving oil from Russia, but Russia is the immortal enemy of the British because of the Great Game and the Crimean War and the U.S. Civil War, etc., etc., etc. The Russians have always checked the British. Mm-hmm. And so the British do not want to support Russia in any way, shape, or form. Thus, that immediately cancels out Russia. Then, say, for example, the United States. Well, guess what? Oil from the United States is not cheap. It's not cheap by any fucking metric because at the end of the day, they have to ship it from the U.S. to the UK. Now, let me take liquid natural gas, LNG. Use this as an example. Liquid natural gas, where does the majority of liquid natural gas supplies from the United States go to?
The U.S.?
Nope. Japan and Korea. Japan and Korea have the infrastructure to accept LNG. Whereas the British, they kind of have the infrastructure, but not really. Because in order to accept liquid natural gas on a large amount, you have to have multiple docks able to receive multiple ships at the same time in order to pump it into the I forget what the name of what the type of facility is called off the top of my head, but it's where it turns the liquid natural gas back into gas, which then is pumped through pipelines.
A refinery?
I just don't remember what the. No, it's not a refinery. It's a facility that literally turns it from a liquid state into a gaseous state, which then is pumped into the pipelines. I forget what they're called. But the point is,
sounding like a fucking retard. What the hell is LNG used for?
Energy,
electricity. Yeah, it's an energy source, dude.
Yeah,
it's just basically liquid natural gas. It's just natural gas cooled down to very cold temperature to where it turns into a liquid.
Yes.
I mean, I knew that, but I was wondering what its uses were, other than
it's mainly used because natural gas is used for heating and for energy production. You remember, all power plants is a big old steam turbine.
Yes.
You burn things to heat up water, create steam pressure. That's how you generate electricity.
Yeah, and that's what natural gas is used for. Fun fact, natural gas is also produced by eating a lot of Mexican food.
Anyways, but here's the thing, is that Europe made the transition to natural gas based on pipeline gas from Russia. So that gas gets piped into Germany. Germany produces the electricity and then sells it off to the rest of the continent. Liquid natural gas is vastly more expensive. We're talking 3, 4, 5 times more expensive than pipeline gas.
Last I heard, the U.S. Liquid LNG that they're getting, it's 7 times more expensive than what they were getting through Nord Stream.
Okay, there you go. So the point is that so U.S. energy resources are ridiculously expensive compared to Russia or getting it from the Middle East. Now,
it's more expensive because they have to be shipped, or is it because of our dollar?
Yes. No, it's because it has to be shipped. Because you have to liquefy the natural gas. In the case of natural gas, you have to liquefy it, transport it, and then de-liquefy it over there. And that whole process makes it incredibly expensive. Whereas if they had a pipeline from the U.S. to Britain, it would be cheap as fuck. Problem, you can't build a pipeline like that. So then you have the situation with, say, Venezuela. And I love that somebody brought up Venezuela. Was that you, Bart?
Oh, yeah, that was me.
Okay. Venezuela is a very particular one because Venezuela did sell a shit ton of energy resources to the British. The British were, if I remember correctly, something like 15 to 20% of their energy resources came from the Venezuelans. The problem is Maduro, which we all know Maduro because they love plastering his face everywhere.
Yep.
Him and his protege, one Che Guevara, understood that, hey, wait a minute. It's really funny how these guys that we keep catching in our country, they all have a weird, funny accent. Huh, weird. The Venezuelans stopped selling as much energy to the British because the British kept trying to fuck around in their country. That's where that all comes from. So the Venezuelans basically put a soft cap on how much energy they were selling to the British for the longest time. And even to this day, because Maduro is so paranoid about attempts against his life and whatnot, which, by the way, the British, if you hear about, say, a regime change, that's the Americans. That's the CIA's bread and butter. They love regime change. Mm-hmm. If you hear about assassinations and, attempts to slander people or to deperson people or so on and so forth, that's MI6. MI6 loves that shit. That's their bread.
Yeah, one other point too, and what you brought up about Venezuela. Also, depending on which country you're buying oil from, it could actually be a different type of oil. Because in particular, Venezuela produces very heavy crude. And
yes, it's referred to as sour medium.
Sour medium. And that is one reason why we're still buying oil from the Russians through the back door. Because we have several of the refineries down on the Gulf Coast were set up back in the day, specifically tuned to refine Venezuelan sour heavy crude. And the only other place we can get it now that we're non persona non grata with Venezuela is, guess where? From Russia.
Canada.
Yep.
Well, what about the oil that comes in out of Canada? Isn't that the same stuff?
Nope, that is Sweet Light. So Sweet Light is great for lubricants and stuff like that, but is not good for energy production.
Good to know.
I thought the stuff coming out of. Hold up, let me try that.
You're talking. Are you talking about? Are you talking about the sour crude coming out of Alaska? Because we pull sour medium out of Alaska, but the problem is until a pipeline is built from Alaska to the U.S., pulling oil out of Purdue Bay is very, very expensive.
Well, given the bullshit that's going on with Canada, I doubt that's going to happen anytime soon.
Oh, I beg to differ. You have to understand one thing about Canada. Canada fucked themselves. The Liberal Party of Canada literally gutted their own ability to sustain themselves. So let me bring this up. So when Canada was like, "Oh, we're going to stop sending energy into the United States," how much energy do you think they were actually sending into the United States?
No idea.
Not much.
It amounted to 3% of our energy imports. Oh, and by the way, the same energy, the oil and gas to produce said energy has to come through the United States anyways. Because the dumbasses completely shelved a pipeline project. I believe it was referred to as the East Line or something like that.
Yeah. They can't get it. They can't get it out east of Alberta, so they have to go through the U.S. to then come back into Canada to get it to like Montreal and shit.
Yep. And thus they cannot, like, literally Canada is sitting there like, and this is what I love about the whole Trump bent the knee to the Canadians. It's like, no, he didn't, because the Canadians were sitting there like, oh shit, we don't have the ability. We're going to be paying 25% on transit fees? Fuck.
Yep.
So you saw that bullshit too.
Or 10%, I should say. My bad. 10%. 10% on transit fees? Oh, by the way, those transit fees add up real fucking quick when you're running that far through the United States in order to get energy resources to the other side of your country.
Yeah.
So overall, like, the British, and going back to the British are fucked because they don't have the ability to get energy anywhere else because it's either too expensive or it's unobtainable. So they have to get their energy from the Middle East. And if they lose grip in the Middle East, then they don't get that energy. Now, of course, you might be like, oh, but they'll just piggyback off the U.S. Depends on if they can. Because, again, if the U.S. starts going in, and I'll use the Qatari example again, if the U.S. starts going in and sending Tier 1 operators after Qatari princes and starts bushwhacking motherfuckers, then all of a sudden it upsets the balance. And the British love their balance.
Yep.
And that's the whole point. That's why everybody should be looking at this situation vastly different than what they are right now. This is a honest to goodness fucking peacekeeping operation that more than likely will end a lot of the strife in the region. That if we play our cards right, and if I was the United States, I would be going this route. I would be buddying up with the Turks as hard as I can. Because at the end of the day, you turn Erdogan into a fucking king, and he checks everybody else. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
Anyways, I think that's a good spot to stop there.
Yep, we're just about an hour and 5 minutes.